Coming up on Wrestling Life.
We had an incredible life. We had a successful business of 23 years. We had a beautiful home, beautiful cars, like beautiful neighborhood. But at the end of the day, there was something more that I needed to be a part of, and it required us moving to Texas. And for me, I had to get to a safe place. I had to get to a place where I felt safe in my values, safe that my kids were safe before I could even start healing myself and seeing, okay, what has happened?
Welcome to Wrestling Life with Ben Veal, the show that features real talk from real talent.
Welcome, friends, to another Wrestling Life, and one awesome conversation I have in store for you today. My guest today was the first ever Diva Search contestant to hold WWE Gold. She'd go on to become not only Women's Champion, but also Pro Wrestling Illustrated's Most Improved Wrestler of the Year in 2007, and years later, even a WWE 24/7 champion.
Yes.
One of the most recognisable and respected names from the WWE's Divas era, my guest personifies what it means to be a champ both inside and outside of the ring. Mum to 3 girls and happily married for close to 20 years now, today my guest is an emotional alignment specialist, and she's on a personal mission to help others go from great to champ. Joining me today is, of course, the one, the only Candice Michelle. Candice, how are you?
I'm fantastic. How are you?
I'm so well. We were saying before you recorded, you've had a little bit of you've been a bit of pain the last 24 hours, haven't you? So I appreciate you gutting it out today.
Yes, that's what we do in wrestling. We kick out, right?
Absolutely. And of course, I will say, going through and researching, kind of getting ready for today's call, you had a lot of injuries, didn't you, in your time in wrestling? You had some bad luck in the later years.
You know, I don't know that I had a lot of injuries. I just, at the end, it's the injuries that took me out. And I think the lack of knowledge around the injury and how injuries in wrestling kind of recovery and perseverance and those kind of things. I just had a really big lack of knowledge, and coming back too fast from a really big injury wasn't the smartest thing to do. So then, yes, it trickled down into a bunch of injuries real quick.
How is your body kind of post wrestling? Like, do you still feel the years that you spent in the ring?
Actually, it's fantastic. As you know, or we'll get into, my husband's a chiropractor. So just the years of being in that business, we now have a house of healing. And so recovery to us, like the things I know now about sports and recovery that I teach my kids and our clients, I wish I knew that when I was younger. But these things kind of weren't so popular back in the day, or so well known back in the day. So having these at my disposal, even like I told you yesterday, I blew my back out. Just random thing. I think it's more emotional. For us, subluxations happen for 3 reasons: traumas, toxins, or thoughts. And, you know, there's just a lot of pressure with starting a new business, and nothing happened to me. I didn't step off the curb wrong or get hit or take a bump. I just was walking around, and next thing you know, my back is out. So I'm just grateful to have the expertise and the modalities on hand that I can attack that pain right away so that I can show up.
Yeah, you messaged me and said, it's quite lucky that I'm married to a chiropractor, isn't it? I mean, it's quite handy, that, isn't it?
It is handy, but it's ironic because like yesterday, sleeping was really hard. I was trying to sleep proper with an injured back and how you're supposed to sleep. And we actually do sleep training because nobody actually teaches you how to sleep.
Like, oh, really?
Yeah. And there's actually a way to sleep to prevent injury. And so I'm like getting in the right position, and it hurts so bad. Like I have to hold my breath and tighten my stomach to move. But at least I know all those things because people would be just stuck in bed. And then I'm like looking at my husband, like, do I wake him up for an adjustment in the middle of the night? Do I want to even get up for that adjustment? I was like, we'll wait till the morning. I'm good.
Yeah. So you and your husband have been married, as I said at the start, for almost 20 years now, and you've been together, I believe, 25 years. Is that right?
Yes. Yeah.
And
I count it all. You know, when you're together 25 years, I was like, that doesn't matter about the marriage certificate. We have been together 25 years.
yeah, we're on 18 years. Yeah, we just had 18 years together.
Oh, congratulations.
Yeah, it's crazy, isn't it? How fast it goes. It doesn't feel like that at all.
No, it's wild to think I've been married or with him for more than half my life. That's pretty cool.
And then it's having kids, I find. Like my last 10 years have just gone so fast since having kids.
Yeah, it's like lightning speed. It's funny because at first, I don't know if you felt this, for me having kids, it seemed to go slow because I had 3 babies kind of at once. And I was like, this does not go fast. Who says this goes fast? Like, you know, I'm not sleeping, changing diapers, multiple kids. And then all of a sudden, once they're a little self-sufficient, you're like, whoa, wait, I have one going into high school. Like, that's crazy.
Wow.
So, yeah, it does go crazy fast.
So you've got 3 daughters. What ages are they now?
Yeah, I have a 14-year-old, almost 12, and almost 9.
Wow. Yeah. So very much very, very busy mum life at the moment. How does mum life compare to wrestling life in terms of the crazy schedule you have to keep now?
I think it is definitely harder being a mom, but I'm grateful for wrestling because I think it prepared me for that. You know, the times when you don't sleep, the time now for me, it's more of like being the Uber mom. You know, how can I get 3 kids to 3 different places? And now I'm a working mom. So I'm like, wow, this is intense. This is different, you know? And so figuring out that schedule, it's like rocket science.
You have to forgive the shameless name dropping, but I had Kurt Angle on here recently and he said exactly that. He said he basically just feels like an Uber driver all day long.
Yeah, totally.
But it is, as soon as you kind of fit in after school activities, clubs, weekend things. I mean, I saw a thing recently on Instagram, which basically said, any parents don't know what weekends are. Like weekends don't exist, do they? But weekends it's activity central for 2 solid days a week.
Totally. And these kids in Texas, it's a lot different than where, you know, I moved from California. I'm from Wisconsin. But like sports here is like a different level. Like my daughter had 5 basketball games in one weekend. Wow. And one of them started at 9 p.m. on Saturday night. What? And I thought, I'm normally in bed at that time. So I was like, do I bring a pillow to this game or a margarita? Like, I'm confused. And definitely a parent didn't schedule this tournament. Yeah. So I was like, okay, I'm learning to get, you know, with the flow a little bit.
Yeah, I think you just have to, don't you, sometimes? We were the same, we went camping this weekend and we were up till gone midnight. And you just have to, sometimes just have to go with it and then hope that the routines will come into place.
Totally.
So how long was it after you finished with WWE that you had your first daughter then?
It's about a year and a half. So literally, I remember being at the gym and I was recovering from my ankle injury. Basically, I shattered my collarbone, had surgery, came back. Actually, I broke it. I came back too fast. The x-ray said it was still broken. And I talked the doctors out of that. I was like, no, I'm fine. Look, I'm totally good. I can wrestle. And I went out and I shattered it on a drop kick, which put me out for 6 months. Tried to come back too fast because, you know, you don't want to be sidelined. I was at the top of my game at that time. And I went to Krav Maga, landed on the bag, tore 2 ligaments in my ankle. And it was that point where I was sitting at the gym and I get the call from WWE that they're going to let me go. And it just kind of made sense in a weird way. I wouldn't say I wanted to be let go. I wasn't ready for that, but something about it, I was just okay with it. And I called my husband, and he was a chiropractor in LA at the time. And I said, hey, honey, this is what happened. He's like, are you okay? And I was like, yeah, do you want to have babies? And he's like, well, it's not like, do I want pepperoni on my pizza? Can we like talk about this when I get home? And I was like,
it's a longer commitment, isn't it? Yeah.
And so we had a conversation about it. He had wanted kids a little bit before I did because I was just on the road so much. It wasn't in my wheelhouse yet. So we decided to travel for a year and just kind of enjoy each other and me being home. And then we had our first child.
I mean, we've seen it a bit more recently, like, for example, how well kind of Becky Lynch seems to have kind of navigated motherhood and wrestling. But it certainly seemed for a long period like you had, if you were a women's wrestler, you had a choice. Either you're wrestling or you can pursue family life. It felt like the two didn't really...
I don't think it ever really mixed in me back in my generation. You know, I don't remember anybody there wasn't anybody that had kids and was working. And so it has really progressed a lot with women being able to do that. So it really says a lot about that women's division and the women, because it's really hard. I can't imagine.
But you were in such a, I mean, I'm going to circle back and talk about Good Chiropractor and House of Heal and all this amazing stuff you're doing. But I'm just going to talk a bit of wrestling quickly, because I mean, that era that you were in, I mean, you were just in such an incredible roster of dance partners. I mean, you know, just a few, and there's so many more, but, you know, Tori Wilson, Trish Stratus, Lita, Victoria, Mickey James, Ashley Mazzaro, Kelly, Eve Torres, Beth Phoenix. I mean, the list goes on and on, but I think so much focus in the last decade has been put on the women's revolution. But before the days of the Four Horsewomen, you know, you guys were doing incredible work in the ring. And I think sometimes because of that Divas tagline, I think that's slightly overlooked, just actually how hard all of you worked. And also, I think, you know, I've had Victoria on the show and you know, Lisa's amazing. And you know, talks very openly about how little time you usually had to tell a story and how often you get 6 minutes and that would include your entrances. And, you know, you really didn't have the same opportunities, I don't think, that the women stars have today to tell a story in the ring.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, everything you said is really true. And I also just think it's how we look at it and how we allow people to treat that era. I think it was an incredible era. I'm so proud to be a part of it. I know sometimes people would maybe say, oh, they didn't pave the way. And I was like, you know what? I did a pudding match, so you didn't have to do a pudding match. You know, that is paving the way, my friend. And you're right. Like the time we had, like, I think my championship match with entrances was 3 minutes. So I think it's really powerful if you look at what kind of story can you tell in 3 minutes? Can you get the crowd behind you in just 3 minutes versus everybody saying, oh, it was, you know, not enough time. So it's like for us, we had to work extra hard with that. You know, how do we get in there and tell a story and still put on a good show and make everybody that came and spent their hard-earned money, like, make it worth it for them? And so that was on us. And, you know, there was a lot more sex appeal. I think there's still sex appeal in the women's divisions and all the companies. But I was okay with that. You know, I was never demoralized. I was never put down. I was never less than. And so for me, I don't look at that division or that time period then less than what it is today. I think it's just a complete different contrast. And I'm so happy the women can main event and get 30 minutes and do all the things they can do. It's really showcases their talent, and I'm so proud of them, but I'm also so proud of everything we did back in the Divas era.
Yeah, absolutely. But I think it also screams of like how much society has changed, because I mean, you know, you reference the fact that you are a history maker, Candice, as being part of the first ever match to be held in a swimming pool full of pudding. But that just wouldn't happen now. There's no way matches like that would be allowed to happen. I think that's the difference is, you know, general kind of female empowerment and what is acceptable in culture has shifted during that era. And already, I mean, you guys were a step beyond it, because obviously there was, you know, the Attitude Era was all about bra and panties matches. And so you guys were like the next evolution of that era. And, you know, ironically, during that era, you had incredible workers like, you know, Jackie Moore and Luna Vachon, who were having to do those matches because that was what the characters were doing at the time. So you were like the next evolution of moving it to, you know, you wouldn't have had the women's evolution without everything that you guys did.
Yeah, thank you for that. I do believe that it really just opened that door. You know, it was just, you know, China and that era opened a certain door and a certain window for wrestling. And then we were just like that next evolution. And now it's evolved even further. And what I think is so great about wrestling is actually the evolution of it, you know, continues to evolve with us. And that's why it's been so successful for so many years. I think last I heard, it was like at 800 billion homes. And that's when I was wrestling. So whatever that possible number could be now with all the countries and places that they visit, like, it really just shows that they continue to evolve with the times and what's going on and what's in the future. And so just as we have to, like computers evolve and phones evolve. And when that storylines evolve, it's really powerful and just being a part of that.
Yeah, I mean, the one thing that doesn't ever change is just the power of a really good long-term story, well told.
Yeah.
And I think that's at the heart of wrestling. The pace of it might change in the presentation. I think when WWE switches over to Netflix, I mean, that's going to be such a game changer, because that's going to be all these people that haven't been exposed to the product are suddenly going to just, kind of stumble upon it for the first time. I think that's going to be incredible for the industry. Yeah. But when you look back at kind of your run that you had, I guess going back to the Diva Search, I mean, what drew you first? Because you were a model first, weren't you? A model and actress. So talk to me about the journey to the Diva Search then.
Yeah, one day my modeling agent called me and he's like, Candice, I have this really weird audition for you. And then he gets really excited. It pays $100,000 and it's a 1-year contract. And it's the WWE. They're having a Diva Search contest. It's the first time they're ever doing this. And he was really excited about the money because he would get 10 or 20% if I would get the $100,000. So he wasn't so excited about if I liked the audition or not. It was just his payday. And I was like, heck yeah. And I was super excited because what he didn't know is I grew up on professional wrestling. Like I watched it every Monday night with my stepdad, Ken, and we watched Monday Night Raw. I went to the shows. I remember my mom yelling at us all the time about watching wrestling too loud. And I had a Hulk Hogan doll instead of a Barbie doll. So I thought, wow, this is so weird that it's coming full circle. And I just knew that this was right for me because when I saw wrestling and watched it, I know they call them superstars, but they were like superheroes to me. Like I never knew there was a wrestling school or you can become a wrestler. Like it just never clicked in my head that was the possibility. Like these were like superheroes on TV. Yeah. And so now that I was actually going to be able to audition for this and it was athletic and there was some acting and some modeling, I was like, this is perfect for me. So making it to the top 10, I don't know if I was like the top 6, something around there. And when I got let go, it was so hard because I really thought like that was perfect for me. And so it was really great once that contest ended and they called me back and they offered me a 3-year contract. It was just really exciting for me.
And did you ever see at that point, were you considering I'm going to actually learn this craft and I want to become a wrestler, or what? How was it positioned to you at the time?
So, I mean, they were positioning it to me. They were saying we want to pretty up the business. That was their goal of this time of bringing models in. But for me, when I signed on the dotted line, I was becoming the champion. So we had 2 different things in mind. And so it was really up to me to show up and prove myself. I was lucky to be put on TV right away, as I realized there were wrestling schools and indies and people kind of came up to TV in different ways. I came up from going to Hollywood and all the auditions and the acting schools and all of that kind of stuff. So just a different path, but I had to learn to wrestle. And the only time I could do that would be on the road. And that meant showing up early when the refs were setting up and getting in there with some of the refs. It meant on my off days, finding some of these indie schools that were around me. It was an 1.5-hour drive just to try to learn to wrestle. But I just loved it. And I knew it was what I wanted to do.
Did that help you in terms of the eyes of some of the more established talent in terms of being seen to be paying your dues? Because I guess this is the time where you had, tough people coming in from Tough Enough, Hollywood writers were coming in, and you kind of got this sense that maybe there was people who had been around the industry for a long time, and then some of these newcomers were kind of coming in and getting TV time. Did it help that people could see that you were genuinely a fan and you were respectful to the business?
I think once they were seeing that, they were more in tune to helping me, especially some of the big stars, when they would see me in there before rolling around with the refs or learning or showing that interest. And I always respected people. It's one of the things we really learn in wrestling is just, respecting the people who have paved the way for you, who bring in all the people to watch the show. And so I just had that. For me, that was kind of common sense. And so when they saw us putting in the work, they really did notice that, and they would help me out. The top stars would say, hey, do this, or do it like this, or what about this? And once I was getting that feedback, I respected that. I respected their time, their energy, their willingness to come down to my level and then help me out. And so it did really pay off.
Yeah, I mean, Victoria's spoken to me a lot about Fit Finlay and how he was kind of the godfather of that women's division. I mean, who kind of really helped you in terms of really learning your craft and getting better in the ring?
Yeah, Fit Finlay was awesome, and he worked a lot with the girls. And for me personally, it was really Arn Anderson and Ricky Steamboat. The two of them, when I started working with Beth Phoenix, they really stepped in as our agents and really, really, the first time I learned that there was even a philosophy to a wrestling match. I mean, I didn't come from the wrestling school, so I'm learning what I'm learning on the fly. There's no in order learning this. Yeah. And so when I realized that and that clicked for me, I was like, whoa, oh, okay. It's like learning that dance, right? And with Beth Phoenix, I just had a great partner who was willing to do the dance, and that's what made our matches just so great. And Ricky and Arn really stepped in and really just kind of, they said to us, we reminded them of them when they used to wrestle. And so it really kind of piqued their interest, and we just kind of stepped into that role a little bit with their leadership, and it was awesome.
I mean, what would have helped a lot, I'm sure, was the fact that you were actually a fan and you had watched it. So whilst you may not have necessarily thought about what goes into storytelling, you know what a good wrestling match looks like, and you know how, Hulk Hogan being a prime example. I mean, Hulk Hogan, would flip the switch on a dime depending on what the crowd was doing. He would, in one facial expression, he would change the entire match. And so I'm sure being a fan, much like me, you had a good sense of actually how to put together a match even before it was explained to you in terms of what a good build is for a match and a good finish.
Actually, I really didn't have that concept because it really is a learned concept. You can see it and watch it and know this is a good match, but to actually break it down into pieces is so much different than enjoying it. So learning that concept even existed was like that moment for me where I'm like, oh, I get it. I get how we do this. I get how we tell this story, how we put this match together, how this flow happens. And for me, I think when stars make it look so easy, and I've talked about Trish Stratus as a female doing this a lot, but all the top stars, when they make it look so easy, it's because they put so much work in behind closed doors. And it's not as easy as it looks when you get in there. Like when you get in there, I can do that. I'm athletic. Oh, I can act and then you get in there, you're like, oh, it's different. Like you're listening to the crowd. Like this is a live audience. And you're like, so having that, learning that there was a philosophy was something learned for me after the fact. It was not something that I went in there knowing. I knew what a good match looked like, but I didn't know how to do it. Yeah.
And I'm glad you bring up Trish because the similarities between you and Trish are so pronounced. You both essentially come in with one role as that kind of eye candy model role, but both of you put so much grit and determination into actually being great performance in the ring. Like, what did you learn from Trish? Because I guess she was a few years ahead of you on that journey by the time you came in.
Yeah, the main thing I really learned was, like I said, she made it look easy. And I didn't give her quite the respect that she may have deserved for being there before me and everything, all the work that she had put in. And so once I got in there, I was like, oh, I'm not telling this story right, or I'm not doing this right. I was so concerned with just learning a move or just learning to bump, like the very basics of it, I was so concerned with. And then it just made me respect her more because she was very welcoming. She was very eager to be a leader and kind to let you know, okay, you got to shift this or try this. And so learning all of that, that was really like, okay, to me, that is where respect is earned, not just because she's been there, but she became a leader, and where she is today and how she continues her legacy and to evolve, like we've been talking about. You look at her and you're like, wow, like that is incredible what she's still able to do 20 years later, right?
Yep.
And so I think I just attribute like real leaders, they care about other people in the business and they earn that respect. And she did that. And so it made me just respect her that much more.
I mean, the run that she's just had last year, just incredible. Yeah. Like best work of her career, 20 plus years on. Amazing.
Totally. And I think she looks better than ever, so like just everything from physical to mental to spiritual, the way she's showing up. It's just a testament to her hard work behind closed doors, like, because you can see other people 20 years later not doing that, right? And so it takes a lot of hard work and consistency to be able to show up like that 20 years later.
And also reinvention. I mean, that for the ability of her to come out and bring that heel character to life, like we've seen that with Christian Cage in AEW recently, being able to the easiest thing in the world would just be to be a fan favorite and ride the nostalgia act and come out to the same music and do what you did 20 years ago. But I think real bravery comes with saying, no, I'm gonna finish my career off with a different chapter. Yeah.
And also I just want to acknowledge that it's not real easy to 20 years later come back and do the same music and the same moves. People think, it would be easy, but it actually isn't. You build up, even just physically, you build up a callus when you're doing it week after week after week. And it's funny, I was just surfing behind a boat and I fell, and ironically, it looked like a bump. It was really funny. It's just my natural reaction to fall still came out like I'm taking a bump in the water. And the next day I was like, oh, my neck hurts. And I mean, that's whiplash in water. And I was like, yeah, I'm good. I was like, you kind of get that itch, like you want to be back in the ring or just be called back for a match. And although I think that would be awesome, then I'm like, ooh, can I handle that? So when you see somebody come back 20 years later, it's because of their consistency that they're able to come back that way. And then to top it off of like, I'm going to be even better. It's like, that's really a testament to the hard work.
Yeah. And I'm glad you clarified that, because I think what I meant by easy, as in the fans' eyes, just return from a character standpoint, like returning to the old catchphrases, the old familiarity things, as opposed to, but I completely get your point. I mean, it's incredible that people who can come back after 10 years away from the ring or even longer and still go, because I know that, I mean, they talk a lot about ring rust, but it is the grind, isn't it? You've got to just keep doing it and keep doing it. It must be so hard when you have a time away from it.
Well, and I think that's the beauty of when somebody also comes back, and when a fan can just be dropped back into that space 10 or 20 years ago with their music or their look or their moves, because it's just showing like, just bringing that energy back, even after 10 years and 20 years, we're humans too, and we go through life too. So to come out and just have that connection again, it's awesome for the superstars and for the fans. And I think it's just great when I get to see that on TV.
Yeah, and I think one of the things that's really special about wrestling, because it's this kind of moment in time, isn't it? As in, I can kind of remember where I was when kind of watching you on TV those years ago. Like you kind of, people are etched in time a bit like movies, and you kind of remember where you were in your life. And then you fast forward and you go to something like a convention, like when I met up with you in Philly a few months ago, and you're suddenly seeing all of these different characters from all parts of your childhood and early adulthood kind of playing out before your eyes. I mean, what's it like for you doing those appearances these days at conventions?
Yeah, I love them. For me, there's two parts of it. One part, I feel so grateful that almost 20 years, I think we're at later, that somebody still wants to come out and meet me. Like for me, I'm just filled with gratitude. Like, if you are willing to come out and come meet me, I'm like it makes me feel so good. Like knowing that we had a connection back there. Because when you're on the road traveling so much, you know there's a connection, but you don't got time to sit down and do all these signings and stuff, you know, unless they put you on a signing. But it's not like now where I can actually have a conversation with you and we remember those times and those memories like you said, that we share together. Like they have a moment in time and I have a moment in time. And so we both go back and we just connect those. So it's really beautiful and a lot of gratitude for me when I get to meet the fans. And the second part of that is being with all my wrestling friends. You know, like we come in and it's like that family's reconnected and that brotherhood and that sistership and the craziness and the memories of being on the road and the things we went through and survived and the fun we had. It's great to come back to that without any pressure of, you know, going after a title.
Yeah, absolutely. And you're still, I mean, you live quite close to Michelle McCall, don't you? And Mark. Yeah, you're in Austin together. So presumably do you see Michelle quite a lot and share the old days?
I do. Yeah, she's been such an incredible friend. You know, when I moved to Austin about 3.5-ish years ago, it was right after that during the pandemic, and my health just plummeted. I showed up in Austin with severe panic attacks, and I knew Michelle obviously from wrestling, but we didn't talk on a daily basis. And she was so kind. She gave me the best health experts, the best vitamin stores, the best spiritual guidance lady, like everything that I needed to rebuild myself. To find those people is really, really hard. And she just stepped out and just like, it's like she held my hand and said, it's going to be okay. And when you don't expect that from somebody and they just show up like that, it's just a testament to their character and their faith. And once again, just filled with gratitude that I had this connection with her and we've been able to build a closer friendship out of that.
I guess you've kind of got those shared experiences of what you went through in WWE, but it's obviously it's building on from that, isn't it, in real life. What was it about? Because I really struggled with the pandemic, certainly the first year of it. It really kind of played into my anxiety and depression. It was just too much to cope with in many regards. What was it about that time that really hit home for you?
Yeah. So for me, and what I really like to speak about nowadays is just really how, like what you said, like this pandemic really affected people in one of two ways, either physically, right? Everybody worried about getting sick or getting this virus, but also emotionally. A lot of people, the panic, the anxiety, the depression, that showed up out of nowhere and unexpectedly. And for me, it was weird because the difference between anxiety attacks and panic attacks is I'm not thinking about it. It's just all of a sudden I'm on the ground. So what I discovered is my subconscious mind is thinking about it. And so while I'm just in go, go, go and fight or flight, my subconscious mind was constantly feeling this anxiety and fear. And for me, there was a lot of things. You know, I had to homeschool 3 girls for 2 years, different ages, different programs, trying to figure that out. It felt like I was locked in a cage in my house. People in the state of California were extremely rude, violent if you didn't have the same beliefs, and hurled insults at you. And we're in the healthcare field, right? And so we believe that the power that made the body heals the body. And so they don't, you know, so when all of a sudden a virus comes out, we're not scared of the virus. We believe that we have prepared our bodies just as we have for the flu or a cold or a respiratory infection, that my body, I have been taking good enough care of it and I have the proper natural tools that if I get this virus, I'm okay. However, the media really portrayed a whole different thing, and it caused a lot of division and a lot of hate and freedoms that were taken away. And when you work so hard in your life for certain freedoms, especially for your children, then it becomes really emotional, and it was so new for everybody. I was processing it and not really knowing I was processing it. All I knew is I had a vision one day that we had to go. And I said to my husband, we got to go. And he said, go where? And I was like, I don't know, but we need to get out of here. And the vision was clear, but had no details. And so that's really hard to follow. And we had an incredible life. We had a successful business of 23 years. We had a beautiful home, beautiful cars, like beautiful neighborhood. But at the end of the day, there was something more that I needed to be a part of. And it required us moving to Texas. And for me, I had to get to a safe place. I had to get to a place where I felt safe in my values, safe that my kids were safe, before I could even start healing myself and seeing, okay, what has happened, and everything that came out of that pandemic, and the stories that came out, and the truth that came out later. But so many people were not willing to let you have your own truths. And so really kind of finding my own voice in that again, and being okay with that. There was a lot of freedoms that were stolen from a lot of people. And I just shared this on my Instagram recently, and I had this realization on how small this was actually compared to some other people. Like, my daughter didn't get to graduate middle school. And that kind of sucks. Like, that was a big ordeal for her. And then I remembered my neighbor, her husband had a massive heart attack. And the kids were not allowed in the hospital to say goodbye, and he passed away. Like, things like that. And then when different truths come out about the vaccine and COVID and the realities of it and where it originated and all this stuff. And I think, wow, my friends' kids didn't get to say goodbye to their dad. Like, that is a violation of freedom, and for me, it's just having your truth. And that really affected a lot of people emotionally. And it ended up being a big trauma, like a hidden trauma that I didn't really know. It was just in there. Yeah. And letting that unfold, and other people know that we can heal from this. And I think everybody needs to heal from this.
It's really important to speak out about it, because I think we rushed back into normal life very, very quickly, and we all went through real trauma. And, it affected me deeply. It affected my relationship with my wife very deeply. My son, I mean, my older son, he went through an autism diagnosis during COVID. So we were kind of dealing with that at the same time. And he's very, with how he sees the world, he's all about justice. And he can understand how politicians in the UK were being allowed to break all of the rules that they had created. And why there wasn't any payoff. And I was like, yes, no, reality, those people broke the law whilst all of us were trying to follow these rules that had been set to us. They were openly and brazenly breaking the laws. And
absolutely. And,
it's really hard.
Thing that, we were a small business owner, and at that, we're a healthcare facility that is not, your normal healthcare facility. We're very alternative methods, all natural, organic, homeopathic, and so they wanted to shut all small businesses down, but that's what put food on the table for my family. Yeah. So as my husband's fighting to keep the doors open of our business, and I'm at home worried, like, if he doesn't go to work, we have no money. Like, we don't put food on the table. Like, I have 3 children. And so speaking your truth during a time when your livelihood is being taken away from you, and other people, even in the US, are having the same luxuries. The politicians are doing the same things, going to the same fancy meals of the restaurants that they're closing down. And meanwhile, they're sending like health certificates, like, to close our business down. And I'm like, we're the ones helping people stay healthy. And so when you are in that time, it's really hard to have a voice, because there is a lot of fear, which I didn't realize, but there was. And there was a lot of anxiety and a lot of stress, because you're going through this time of you're not sure how you're going to provide for your family. And so getting to a place of safety for me and feeling free And then I had to heal. And that was a journey. It was a long journey. And it brought so many gifts because now I can share this journey with people. And if you haven't healed from that, we have options for you to heal from that and so many other things.
Yeah, so talk to me then about House of Healing and specifically what you're doing with emotional alignment.
Yeah, so we kind of describe our practice now as if you get in a car accident, a lot of people will come to a chiropractor, right? Because there's physical pain, there's whiplash, there's back pain, but nobody actually heals from the trauma. The car accident is a trauma. And some people may get into the car right away and drive away. Some people may never get in a car and drive again. And then other people, you think you're fine. And then 10 years later, something happens and it triggers that emotion from that car accident. So I do the emotional side in here. My husband does the physical side. I created emotional alignment through my journey of healing from panic attacks. I tried everything. I was rock bottom. I tried prescriptions. I tried thousands of dollars in supplements. I've tried chiropractic care, and everything was kind of trying to help me, but I was not getting back on my own 2 feet. And it wasn't until I found spiritual guidance and really going back in time and healing from all those things that I went through, and even pre-COVID, pre-pandemic. And so healing from those things really let my nervous system finally say, okay, thank you. And when you are emotionally charged, your energies and your frequencies, they just come off different, and they cause inflammation in the body, which causes pain and disease and autoimmune diseases and cancer. And so in our practice, we want to make sure that you're physically taken care of. But if you have emotional needs that we need to handle, that's what I do. Like my husband would have a patient come in, and same thing like me, like, my back yesterday, we were talking about that. Like, what happened? I don't know. I just stepped off a curb, my back blew out. And then within like 5 minutes, they're talking about this massive divorce that they're going through. And we're like, oh, so this is a thoughts, and that's causing the physical pain. And so, yes, the physical pain is real and it needs to be addressed, but it's not going to go away if we don't address the emotional state and get rid of those negatively charged emotions. So that's what I do in the practice.
And have you completely overcome panic attacks through that, or is that something you still struggle with?
I have overcome them, and my body also knows how to go there, if that makes sense. Mm-hmm. So I don't have them every day. I had them every day. I would pass out every day. So I have not had that. However, if I get into a very extreme, stressful state, I need to let my body know that I'm not in a state of panic, because it could easily go to panic attack. It's like once you've seen something, you can't unsee it. Yeah. So now that my brain has seen that, it's like, oh, do I want to go there? Even sometimes if I get a little excited, the brain doesn't know the difference in that energy frequency of excitement and nervousness. They vibrate kind of the same. And so I have to remind my brain, okay, I'm excited or I'm nervous. I'm not in panic, right? And so it takes a lot of work, even though I'm not in that fight or flight anymore, and a lot of balancing with my hormones and supplements. And I do emotional alignment myself every 2 weeks. So I've committed to it for the rest of my life. So many people are committed to the physical aspect, right? Like I'll go to the gym 4 days a week, and nobody's committed to the mental aspect. And it's like that gym isn't going to pay off if you're not mentally stable. Yeah,
you're right. And how does that align to because I know you also do the wider coaching. So your 21-day champ challenge, which I love the idea of. What is champ, and how did that idea come about?
Yeah, so obviously I think becoming a champ was an incredible time in my life. But I really loved becoming the 24/7 champ. And that wasn't planned, right? I was called back, and I had they don't tell you what you're going to do. So I'm thinking there's a lot of us, former wrestlers being called back to this special pay-per-view. Usually maybe we'll get like a sentence or just seen in a promo, very simple, right? I was not expecting anything. And what they didn't know is that I've been working diligently behind the scenes on creating these programs and my motivational coaching and my motivational speaking and doing my TEDx talk. And so when I got there and they said I was going to win the 24/7 title, I was like, that's when consistency over time equals results. They didn't know what I was doing. They didn't know if I was sitting home on my butt doing nothing. But the universal law of attraction knows. And that continual work for me, and then for out of nowhere, what it seems like to win the 24/7 champ, that was just like this aha moment of, wow, I really live, eat, and breathe that. Like, that's really philosophies that I live by. I believe in working hard. I believe in being the first to arrive and the last to leave. I believe in showing up to the best of my abilities. I believe in the assignment that I'm put on this planet to do and this purpose that I'm meant to live, and getting support and building my tribe so that I can continue to be a champ. And so it just really resonated with me that that's who I am every day. That's who I try to show up as every day. And champions are not perfect every day. I fail so many times. I falter so many times. I fall on my butt so many times. And I'm like, okay, champions do that. And we just get back up and we try again and we try something new. And so out of all of that, actually right before the pandemic is when I created the 21-day champ program and launched it. And then the pandemic hit and I went to being a homeschool mom.
Okay. What in terms of a kind of 21-day program and champ, like what are some of the changes you've seen in people from the people you've been coaching through that?
A tremendous change. So that program came out. And what I love about that is I have a philosophy around goal setting that's a little bit different. And I think all philosophies are great. It's just what works for you. So I believe in starting with small goals, very small goals, and small goals compound over time to make your main goals true. So for instance, if I have a goal of drinking half my body weight in ounces of water every day, I'm naturally going to eat a little better. And then because I'm eating better, I'm actually going to want to get outside more and I'll be less depressed. And then I'm going to want to put on a face of makeup and put on a nice clothes and go on a date night so my relationship's better. And then I'm feeling good there, so I'm going to want to work out the next day. But I'm not focusing on 10 different goals. I'm focusing on just drinking water. And there's scientific proof. Cheers to that.
Cheers.
That 21 days creates a habit. And there's other scientific proof that says it's longer than that. But I really like the 21 days because in everybody's mind, 21 days is possible. Right? When I start saying it's like 746 days, you're like, what? Like even the number I don't even want to mention. Right? But when you say 21 days, and so in that program, what I was doing is if you created one new habit every month for this year, how would your life change? I mean, and that's drastic. So if I started with drinking water one month and the next month was I'm going to do a walk every day. And the next month, all of a sudden I'm going to read 10 pages of a book every day, like very small habits, but over the compound of a year, my life will shift drastically. And so that's what that program was really about. But after my panic attacks and just getting certified in NLP, which is neuro-linguistic programming, very fancy name, but just reframing the brain and reframing the mind. And I created emotional alignment to just take everything I do. And I was certified in spiritual guidance and just connecting to my intuition and God and being able to hear that. We get so in our emotions. It's like this hurricane.
Yeah.
And I get in mine too. But if I can get you into the eye of the hurricane, then that's really powerful.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so just getting you in alignment with your emotions so that you vibrate at a higher frequency. And when you do that, whatever you're trying to manifest will actually happen. And that's what I call a miracle. People are like, miracles don't happen to me. They don't exist. I'm like, no, you're just not vibrating at an energy to be willing to let that in.
You've also referenced God a few times. I mean, I believe you have a faith tattoo, don't you? I believe I read that somewhere.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have a faith tattoo somewhere as well, hidden there. And that's, I was going to ask what kind of role has kind of having that faith and having God in your life played throughout your kind of career, and particularly over the last few years with some of the challenges.
Yeah, that was one of my other values of why I moved. It's, where I lived, like, you weren't allowed to go to church. You were looked down at for going to church. You're not allowed to hang up American flags. So ironic when you live in America. Yeah. Just like all these things. So I had to get back to my core values. And I was raised in the church, but it wasn't like we went every Sunday. So for me, it was a real spiritual connection. But having kids and getting them back into church and the values of just love your neighbor as yourself, right? Like, do good, be good. Like these values that you want to raise your family around. It became really important to me to believe in something bigger, especially during these presidential debates here in the United States, knowing that it's not one man that leads this country, it's one God, one nation under God. And that just makes me feel better, makes me vibrate at a higher level, knowing that there's a lot of corruption in the world, right? Not just in the US or in the UK. I mean, the world, that we can't get away from it. So I believe in that higher power, and I believe in that universal law. And if I look at just one man leading us, my gosh, like, that feels pretty scary.
Yeah, it really does. I'd far rather be led by God than led by a politician.
Totally.
Sure. So I want to ask you about a couple of your kind of career highlights before we wrap up from your wrestling days. So, I mean, I guess the first obvious one is winning the WWE Women's Championship from the first time over Melina. I mean, that was Vengeance 2007. How much time did you know beforehand that was happening? And what was that like in the moment to actually win the gold?
I found out that day, like a few hours before the match. So very different on nowadays, like these superstars, especially for the female, they get notified like, oh, next week you're going to do this promo or you're going to do this match. So at least you can put that time and energy into it. For us, it was like you're going by the seat of your pants. So it's like a couple hours before the match. By the way, you're going to take the title today. What? Like, I mean, like, how do I even process that in a couple hours? I've been working, I think it was about 2-3 years that I had been working towards that goal. And it's just like one day they're like, yep, today's the day, like so nonchalant. And for me, I'm like this is crazy. And then they're like, and by the way, you have 3 minutes with entrances to make all that happen. And I'm like, oh my God. Like, so I just remember telling myself, enjoy that moment. And you brought this up. I love that you said this. It was a moment in time. And literally it's a moment. And so I just remember like taking that moment to just feel what that felt like absorb all of that, like connect with all the fans that were there and just have that moment. Because the second you walk through that curtain, you start all over. Now everybody wants the title, It's not like you're on vacation. It's like now the real work starts. You're like, whoa, okay, I haven't been working hard enough, So that moment in time was a really special moment. Just knowing that hard work pays off. And if you believe in yourself and your dreams, like it'll happen.
Do you play back lots of your old matches to your girls? Like if they watch lots of your wrestling career?
My husband plays some for them. I never watch my stuff. I'm so critical. I would be hypercritical of myself. And, obviously you can't go back and change that stuff. Now I have a different mindset, but back then I could have picked myself apart like crazy, So I always just move forward, like knowing, okay, you kind of know what you did good, what you got to work on. If you botched a move, if you got to change something up. And so I always just move forward beyond that. I wasn't big on watching myself back.
I think watching footage of yourself, whatever industry you're in, is weird. Like I don't ever watch any of these back, apart from what needs to be edited. Like, you have the moment, you recorded, you move on. I think But obviously in fans' minds, they are iconic moments with wrestling. You watch it again and again and again and again.
Yeah.
It's different to many other sports in that regards, that we will replay matches over and over again.
Yeah,
But
totally.
for yourself, it's a night in the ring, isn't it? And then on to the next town.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know. There's just something weird about watching myself. And yeah, I've never really done that. Yeah.
And then, obviously you came to wrestling as you've been a model beforehand. And then you followed lots of your contemporaries in doing Playboy in 2006. What was that experience like? You hear a lot of kind of mixed things about the Playboy experience. Was it a positive one for you?
For me, this was a dream come true. I wanted to do Playboy when I was living in Wisconsin, and I moved to California. And I'll never forget, this was a really powerful story, and I hope this encourages anybody who has ever been told that they can't do it. I had done Playboy special edition, like their college girls edition. So I'd auditioned for the magazine. They put me in some of these magazines. And I remember the makeup artist doing my makeup for one of them. And she was the artist that did it for the Playmates. And I said to her, it was a dream for me to be a Playmate. And she just looked at me and she goes, oh, she goes, once you do the special editions, they'll never make you a Playmate.
Wow.
And just robbed my dreams in that moment of oh, I didn't know this was even a thing. I thought I was working my way up the ladder kind of thing. And I remember her saying that. And then I get the WWE contract, and then they asked me to do Playboy as a celebrity on the cover. Now that pays 10 times more than being a Playmate. And so I just remember that of don't let somebody tell you you can't, or you can't shift the rules or how things used to be done, because she could have really just taken that dream away from me, that I would never have that. And instead it was just exemplified, and being on the cover was really just saying you can do what you believe you can do. And so having that, for me, it was a great experience, and it was a dream come true for me. Some other people want to downplay it, or maybe they didn't have a great experience, but for me, it was amazing.
Well, it's huge mainstream exposure, isn't it, as well, beyond the world of WWE. It's a massive deal, isn't it, from a cultural piece to be involved with Playboy.
Yeah, and for me, Playboy just meant these were the 12 most beautiful women in the world would be in this magazine. And that's just how I saw the magazine. I understand other people see that magazine different, or have different backgrounds or different reasons for viewing the magazine. But for me, it was if I could be in there, that's what it meant. It was the woman's body is just beautiful, and it's an art, and it's something to be seen. And so it was really powerful for me to have that experience, and it was a dream for me.
And then you were talking about dreams being taken away as well. Obviously you were let go quite quietly from WWE, and after having a few injuries, but that wouldn't be the bookend of your career, because 24/7 title win aside, you had your official retirement match in October 2017, a House of Hardcore show, with the wonderful Lisa Marie Varon, who has been one of my favorite guests so far, and one of the biggest supporters of this show. What prompted your return to the ring? Why was Lisa the right person? And what was it like to finally kind of close the chapter on your own terms?
Yeah, it was about almost 10 years after I was let go from WWE. I was driving down Ventura Boulevard, and Tommy Dreamer calls me. And we had been close friends, but we'll text here and there. He never calls me. And so I was like, oh no, I'm worried. Why are you calling me? And I answered the phone. I was like, are you okay? He's like, yeah, I'm okay. And I was like, oh, what's going on? Kind of worried. And he's like, I've really been thinking about it. And I think that you deserve a farewell match and have a final retire match with House of Hardcore. And we'll do it in your hometown of Milwaukee, Wisconsin. And I was like, wow. And he said to me, fans deserve that. And I guess I never thought of it from that perspective. I was so consumed with my own journey of it that at that point I thought, oh, fans move on, right? They move on to the next superstar that's there and they don't even think twice about it. And I was wrong about that. And so he gave me this opportunity and he said, we'll make it simple. If you want to do like a mixed tag match, we'll bring in some of our friends and make it fun. So I don't have to do a lot of moves because I hadn't been in the ring in a decade. And I just knew that I needed to do a singles match. And I had no idea how I was going to do that. And so I said, you know what, Tommy, I need to do a singles match. Let's see if Lisa will be my opponent. Lisa has been by far the most kind and generous and biggest leader in that ring. She is the most underrated female superstar of this day. I cannot believe she's not in the Hall of Fame yet because she has worked so hard to put so many women over and teach them and be full of fun and life. And she appreciates the fans. I mean, the whole part of wrestling, like she gets it. And I was like, I would like to do this with her. She'll do it with me. And I remember calling up my friend Rikishi because he had a ring near me in a wrestling school. And I said, hey, brother, this lady's going to get back in the ring. Can you help me out? And he's like, yep, come on down. And I went down. And that was actually my first experience of like a wrestling school. And he said, well, where do you want to start? I said, from the beginning, as if I know nothing, because I was never trained even really how to take the bump properly.
Wow.
It's just kind of learning. And he started from the beginning, the way he does with his students. And I walked out of there crying because my neck hurt so bad. I was like, what am I doing? But I continued to show up. And what I love about Rikishi is not only is he brilliant with helping me physically in the ring, but the wisdom that he had and the things that he taught me and the stories he shared, I have so much love and respect for him. And I remember him sharing one thing. So I wanted to go, even though this wasn't technically my finisher, in my eyes, the flying crossbody was my finisher. It was just the move that was my best. I should have made it my finisher. I don't know why I didn't, because I thought I needed something fancier. And so I said, I want to do that, but that's also the move that ended my career. So when I was practicing and climbing to that top rope, that trauma was reappearing like it was yesterday. Wow. And my legs were shaking. And I was like, what's wrong with this ring? And he's like, it's your legs. And I was like, this ring is not okay. He's like, no, you got to calm down. And I was like, what do I do? Do I do this top rope move that ended my career and relive this trauma and try to heal from it by landing this? And he said, listen, he said, when you get to that ring, you check the ropes, you check the ring, and you see if you go to the second turnbuckle or you go to the third. I was like, oh, that's a thing? Like, I was never taught that. And I got to that ring, and the ring was set up beautifully, but those ropes were so loose. Like, it was wild. And just that education that he gave me, I knew, even though I wanted to go to the top rope, like I wanted to make it this big move, I knew it wasn't safe for me. It wasn't safe for Lisa to go there. So we went to the second rope and we finished it off there. But all that wisdom that Rikishi gave to me, and he sat there with me and helped me out and helped me get back into my groove so that I could do that final match. I'm just so grateful and have so much respect for him.
Well, I think that's a real perfect bookend to your career, isn't it, as well? Because you're using the education and what you've learned as a performer to make a really good decision as your final move.
Totally. Well, and it kind of came full circle. It's like I got to experience, a little bit of that indie life and a little bit of the wrestling school. Not full on like a lot of people did, but it was really cool to just kind of come full circle and be a part of all that and say, hey, let's go back to square one. Like, what do you do for square one?
Well, I think it's amazing. Not just what you did in your wrestling career, but the journey you've been on since, Candice, and what you and your husband are doing today. And I could happily talk to you all day. I think we're going to do another one at some point. It has to happen. But when it comes to my audience who maybe have only kind of maybe kept up with your WWE days, what do you think? What would you say you're proudest of? Like, maybe is it your wrestling days? Is it the life you've lived afterwards? What's your kind of proudest achievement, would you say?
The first thing that came up for me when you asked that was what I feel I was great at in wrestling was taking the heat. I wasn't this high flyer. I didn't have the fanciest moves. But when I was in there and somebody was beating the shit out of me, I really knew how to take that. I really knew how to sell that. I really knew how to put my opponent over. And I think that is ultimately what put me over. And that lesson I continue in my daily life. Like when I was in the panic attacks, I just think I'm in the heat. I'm in the heat. And if I keep going, I'm going to get to the comeback. If I give up, I'm going to be stuck in the heat. And that's where a lot of people in our business, especially after they come out of wrestling, they're like, who am I now? What do I do? And I think what my greatest accomplishment is being good at being in the heat, because all of us at some point in life are going to be in the heat and we go back to the heat, right? Like the match starts over, but you never get your comeback if you don't push through that. You don't get your lessons, you don't get your gifts. And I think that's what I'm most proud of, is not only being able to do that for myself, but being able to do that for my clients and let them see, like, if you're struggling, we're going to get you to the comeback. You deserve a comeback. And yes, you get a comeback. It doesn't happen as fast as it does on TV. It's not 3-minute heat. Mine was a 3-year heat. And I was like, wow, okay. Like, how much do I really believe in this? But that was my little light when I was rock bottom, my little light when I was like, why am I still here on this planet? And so if anybody needs to hear this today and you need a little light, you got to know that if you go through the heat, you get your comeback. And that's a universal law.
I love that. So look, if anyone listening today who wants to kind of keep up with what you're doing these days, I mean, there's loads of information on your website, CandiceMichelle.com. But where can we find more about kind of the good chiropractor and the work you're doing with House of Healing and everything else you've got going on? Because there's a lot, isn't there?
Yeah. My husband's website is thegoodchiropractor.com, so you can find information about our House of Healing on there. I'm also most active on Instagram. It's at Mrs. Candice Michelle. And I just post a lot on there, kind of what we're doing. There's a link to book with me if anybody needs support or needs help. And I'm so grateful to you and everybody, 20 years later, still interviewing me about wrestling and supporting me in this chapter of my life, because it's like you created this family that you never knew you created. So I'm just really grateful, and I hope people stay in touch with me.
I'm sure they will. And I love speaking with people like you, because yes, you had a persona and you had a global platform through wrestling. But what I love is then what you do with that afterwards. Because a lot of power comes with that worldwide fame. Yeah. And I think it's, I just love meeting people like yourself who are doing something really good in the world with that name.
Yay, thank you so much. It's been a pleasure.
And I enjoy talking about wrestling as well, of course.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, thank you. It's been awesome.
You're so welcome. So look, I have a couple of thanks at the end that I always like to do. So firstly, thank you to every single one of my listeners who have checked out this wonderful conversation today. And secondly, thank you to my producer, Jeff Easton from Tall Oak Productions, for bringing wrestling life to life. Candice, can you give Jeff a little shout out? He loves a shout out.
Yes, Jeff, I want to thank you so much for doing this, because we know that without those people behind the scenes, none of this would happen. So we're so grateful for you, and keep charging. And
finally, thank you most of all to my wonderful guest, Candice Michelle. Thank you for coming on today.
Yay, thank you. You're amazing. Mwah, mwah.
So that's it for us. Join us again on Wrestling Life Scene for more real talk from real talent. Until then, please be good to each other. Pay it forward if you can. And I'll see you soon. Bye.
Yay.